joining us this afternoon. I'd like to encourage, if you're sitting way close to the back, if you want to come a little bit closer and we can all hear our guest today. I am the Vice Chair of the Center for Latin American Studies. My name is Daniel Alarcon. I want to welcome you all to our great event this afternoon. This is unfortunately our last event of the semester. This event was made possible by our moderator, who I'll introduce to you in a second, and also with the co-sponsorship of the English department. And they also made this lovely room available to us today. The Transnational Working Group, who is affiliated with the Townsend Center for the Humanities, and the Granta magazine. So thank you to all of our co-sponsors. I will introduce our moderator today, and then he will introduce our panelists who are with us today. So Daniel Alarcon is the author of Lost City Radio. He is the winner of the 2009 International Literature Prize. And please help join me in welcoming him today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dionisia. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I want to thank Dionisia and Beth Perry of the Center for Latin American Studies for all their hard work to make this happen, and also Namwali Sherpel from the English department. Thank you for helping put this together, and I thank all of you for coming. I am going to introduce our panelists, and the idea is to have a really informal, kind of spontaneous discussion. They've given us the title from London of The Future of Spanish Language Writing, which I think is not possible to cover in an hour because I don't know what that means, and I think probably none of us do. So let me just introduce everyone, and we'll get right to it. Andrés Felipe Solano, to my right, was born in Bogotá, Colombia in 1977. He has published the novel Salvame, Joe Louis, Save Me, Joe Louis, and was the article's editor for the magazine Soho, which is published in Bogotá. He is best known perhaps in the field of journalism for his work in Medellin. He wrote a piece that was a finalist for the Fundacion de Nuevo Periodismo prize that was called 6 meses con el salario mínimo, 6 months on the minimum wage, where he lived in one of Medellin's rougher neighborhoods as a factory worker and wrote a kind of story of those 6 months. We're going to ask him about that. Definitely. And then has spent a lot of time in Korea and is perhaps soon moving to Spain. Perhaps. We'll discuss that as well. So this is Andrés Felipe Solano. To my left is Carlos Yushimito del Valle, a fellow Peruvian. His short stories were first published in university magazines and then by Sarita Cartonera in a limited edition titled El Mago. 2 years later, his second collection of stories, Las Islas, was warmly received by the critics, and their stories set in fictitious Brazil, and we're going to talk a lot about that. He's currently at Brown University getting a doctorate in Latin American literature? Or? Yeah. Okay, and his stories have been translated into French and Portuguese and English now with the new edition of the Granta Best Young Spanish-Language Novelist. To my far left is Carlos Labbe of Chile, also born in 1977. Following a family tradition, he likes to recognize the song of every bird in the countryside. Okay. A specialist in the works of Onetti and Bolaño, he has published the hypertext novel Pentagonal, Incluidos Tú y Yo, in 2001. The novels Libro de Plumas, Navidad y Matanza, and most recently Locuela from 2009, as well as one collection of short stories, and a couple of records with his bands Tornasolido and Ex Fiesta. Correct. Yes, and now he's a literary critic and an editor. He lives in Piscataway, New Jersey. So that is who is here, and I couldn't be happier to be moderating this discussion, and I'm just really interested in hearing from them. So I'm going to start with Carlos Yushimito, because you have a particular project that I think, at least in your first book, that I think a lot of people in this room might find a little surprising. Your stories are all set in Brazil, correct? Have you been to Brazil?
Never.
So explain, please.
Okay, that's a very difficult topic for me because I have to accept that I am a complete liar. And, but first I want to express my gratitude for the invitation. Thank you, Daniel, and thank you, people from Berkeley. And thank you to all of you for being here. Brazil is, it was a way to write about Peru, actually. And I was trying to imagine the borders of the new Peru, something you did absolutely amazingly with your book, the first one.
Thank you.
But for me, it was very difficult because I'm too close to the reality of Peru. I'm talking about the what we call their pueblos jóvenes, right? And the favelas in Brazil. So when I thought about Brazil, I was not just thinking about the tradition of the Brazilian literature. I'm very, very excited about that. I have been reading a lot of Brazilian writers for the last 2 years, and it's a wonderful literature, something that we have to discover. And I have, and I wanted to write about Peru, but using Brazilian references. And I was trying to convince the Peruvian readers using another reference, but at the same time talking about our similar problems like poverty, drugs problems, security, etc. And so this was a way to talk about Peru and to use some books and authors from Brazil that I really admire, like, for example, Guimarães Rosa, who is an amazing writer, or Rubén Fonseca, who write actually about the favelas.
Great. We're going to get more into that because I'm pretty interested in it as a project. I want to turn to Carlos Labbe just to give an introduction. Your novels are almost like puzzles, and I was interested in the idea of even the one that the hypertext novel is obviously interactive, but they all seem very interactive. It's like you have you are very demanding of your reader, and so I wanted to talk to you about I wanted to ask you who your readers were, or who you're imagining those people to be, because you're asking so much of them in terms of even putting the novel together.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thanks for inviting me. I think 3 years ago we are talking about who is the readers of the literature books nowadays in Chile in a congress, and the discussion came to the topic about how the books it should be, the novels and the poems and essays should be written in a way a lot of people should understand it, as the critic that was making that statement says in a way that everybody should have access to literature in a way to improve the symbolic realm of Chile, for example, and not should from her point of view we should not be seeing movies or reading comics, for example. And I said to her that this is a very elitic, I don't know, it's fine this word, elitic position, and yeah. we should work and read and write thinking that everybody is as intelligent as we are. I think the better forms of democracy for me is thinking that everybody is so stupid or so intelligent that I am.
Well, you said in an interview, I read an interview where you said, "Estoy en contra de la claridad." I'm against clarity.
Yeah, clarity. That's was in a context. I work in publishing. So in this interview, they asked me about some authors of bestsellers novels. And I said these authors are, for me, not writers because in a sense, they are working for a group of people who do the novels for them. They are part of this. They are not authors. They are part of a major author entity. The bestsellers, like I don't know, Dan Brown, for example, is a company, Dan Brown Company, and Dan Brown is the number of the company. So the narrative of the bestsellers are very clear. They go straight to the point. The story begins with the case, and they go chapter after chapter telling you what happened and who was the murderer. And at the end they say all the keys, and you left the book and you have the sense everybody is fine. Everything is fine, and everything is in place, and you close the book, and the word turns clear. And as an author, I think nothing is clear. When I write, everything is confused, and I appreciate the writers who dive into the mess of the unconscious and the complicated political and gender and unconscious things. And I think the clarity is a lie. I think it's like Yushimito's Brazil.
Thank you
for that.
Thank you. I want to turn to Felipe Solano here, who, in a sense, I had the sense reading Salvame, Joe Lewis, that your Bogota was invented too, that it was a slightly darker, more sordid comic version of the city. I admit that I don't know it super well, but it seemed everything was exaggerated in some ways. Was that just because I don't know it as well as you do?
Could be, but you know, it's related with the mind of the main character, who's exaggerates everything. Because Bogota, in many ways, is like that. So.
Do you like Bogota?
Not really.
Yeah. I wanted to ask this because I read I remember I was reading the book, and I was like.
Yes, I share few things with the main character. One of the things is the rage against Bogota.
Yeah, you said in an interview that what inspires you, and you said el gran tedio bogotano, the grand tedium of Bogota.
Yeah. You
talk about that.
Yeah, it's I have always that fear that I'm going to die alone in Bogota under the rain. So that's I'm so happy about this list, because maybe not. Yeah, but it's a Bogota that I suffer, not in a tragic way, but I still suffer that Bogota that's supposed to happen many things, and during the 90s explodes the bombs and that kind of violence that you feel it in the streets. But at the same time, I have the most boredom days of my life there. And maybe I moved to writing to share some other things with the city, many through words, and maybe have a kind of reconciliation with those days.
Do you consider yourself first a novelist or first a journalist?
I consider myself a writer, and both are part of my life. I don't. Right now, I cannot see myself just a journalist or just a novelist, because I made my living on journalism, and at the same time, I'm working on a novel.
Mm-hmm.
So I have one foot on every orilla.
Every shore.
Shore, on every shore, and I guess I'm happy to having both things on my life.
Mm-hmm. You've all.
Because I can imagine myself like working just 3 or 4 years in a novel. That makes me crazy. So I have to move on to life, and that's the kind of journalism that I try to.
I should note that after California, Andres Felipe is taking a bus trip to New York on Greyhound, and I was wanting to tell you about the grand tedium of Greyhound. Will make Bogota seem like
how to lose your ass.
Yeah. You have no idea what is in store for you.
Yeah, because it's going to be 68 hours or something.
It'll feel like the 6 months in Medellin, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask Liz about jumping genres, because Felipe works in journalism and in fiction. Carlos Labbe, you've also written you've written short stories, poems, scripts for film, and the work is also different. I was wondering if you could talk about how you feel jumping. Do you also feel that idea that I'm a writer first, and then whatever genre I spill my words into is fine?
I think I'm writing always. I think the script, for example, is a literature genre. Mm-hmm. It's a new genre, and it has a poor publishing demand. Mm-hmm. In Chile or some places in Latin America, you can't find any script published. And I think writing for films, it's a way to write poetry, I think, because it shares the work with the image. And in other way, you can see the script like a other form of narrative, because it has the problems of how to tell a story. And I'm very concerned about how to work with the language, with the language and the textual matter in the screenwriting, because the director, who is a critical adapter of your work, one reader like every other reader, they open the pages of your script, and they exhumates the story, and he exhumates the story, and he leaves the textual realm away. Mm-hmm. And all the work with the words you made in the script loses his place. And I think writing for other formats, like to write a lyrics for a song, for example, it's a struggle with the form for not losing the verbal work. Right. For me.
Right. The Carlos Yushimito, I wanted to transition, touching off what Carlos said about film, and I had a sense that your Brazil is in some ways influenced by some of the great Brazilian films. Is that correct?
Yeah, especially this one. I forgot the name.
That one, I loved that one.
But yeah, it happens. Yeah. Probably, I have to accept that I was inspired by Roland Fonseca, basically, mm-hmm. and City of God. That's
City of God. Yeah.
And Yeah, I'm not fascinated by violence. For example, those are the main ideas of Fonseca Medeiros. I don't remember the name of the filmmaker. But I was fascinated by the location, at Brazil as a place, and a fictional idea, because Brazil for the rest of Latin America is just like an island. It's so far, and it's a clear example of how cultural geography is stronger sometimes than physical geography, because we are very close, but language in this case separate us extremely.
Right.
So I don't know. I wish to talk about Brazil also because in a way that means that we can share a lot of problems, and the location is not the most important in Latin America, and we share a lot of same sensibility. In this case, we can talk about the violence, or wherever, but
yeah, you say you're not there's so much violence in the stories, but it's almost always implied. It's a gun appearing but not going off, which I say is a rule sort of in fiction, that if the gun shows up, it has to go off. But a lot of times your violence just happens off the page. Yeah.
It's implicit, as you say, and it's aesthetic. And there's probably, I believe the main violence in Latin America is implosive. I don't know if you say that in English. Implosive is inside, and it's not expressed. All right?
Like internal, directed at oneself.
Yeah. Yeah. And for example, the story has been published in the English edition. It's about a man who uses a costume. He's a crocodile, and he dances in a store. It's a way to spread that, the mask we have, and like in your story, in City of Clowns. There is another, I don't know, I think we represent a lot of things that show that the violence is inside us in a way, and is affecting us every day, but it's not shown.
This idea of masking oneself, which is in your stories, Felipe, you literally sort of hid out in this working class neighborhood in Medellin. Can you tell the people here who haven't read your piece sort of what the project was and what you learned in those 6 months?
Yes, I moved to really violent neighborhood in Medellin. At that time, it was with a past, with a violent, and I decided to work in a factory at the same time. I just hired a room in one of the houses in this neighborhood, and I spent 6 months of my life working in this project. I chose Medellin because Medellin is, for me, is really important for Colombia, because I guess the story of Colombia passed through Medellin and explains the last 30 years or something. So that's why I decided to move to Medellin. But I didn't want to focus like on economic issues or political issues. So that's why I decided to just tell the story about myself doing this for 6 months. And in that way, I just consider that way the most honest way to talk about Medellin people. And it was difficult at what point, because I decided to write about their happy lives in Medellin, surrounded by many, of course, tragedies. That was the challenge, and I guess that's the reason why the piece works, because I achieved that. But yes, you were talking about mask, and it was a big conflict, of course, with myself.
Because they didn't know you were writing this.
Yeah, yes.
And I heard you. I read somewhere where you said that you weren't sort of convinced by the the ethics or maybe it wasn't ethics that you said in the interview, but about this journalism of immersion, that you weren't, suplantación was a word you used, you weren't convinced by it, and yet you practice it.
Yeah. It was a long struggle because, yeah, I was basically lying, and that's fine in fiction, but in non-fiction it was difficult to manage. I told the family from the very beginning, but I decided not to tell my co-workers. So I avoid many relations outside of the factory, for example. They used to invite me to have some beers after the work, and I say no, because I didn't want to mix more that relations.
That's hard, though.
Yeah, it was very hard. Yeah,
it's
because
hard.
I have to go and have the beer by myself.
Fair enough. Fair.
Yeah, but the piece, or I try to talk along of this article to put this struggle, and in that way maybe let people know what I was doing.
Right.
I think about Carlos and Andres are saying about the future of the narrative in the world. I think only in Spain, in Latin American or Spain narrative, they are talking about the violence we introject, this concept of the psychoanalysis introjection. The violence in Latin America have been since the Spain invasion and before.
Yeah, and we didn't invite the violence, I guess.
Yes,
it's a human thing, I guess.
Yeah, we
shared that.
And you have and you were making an embodiment of a worker, a hard worker. Yes. And I think with
this face,
it's a good thing to think about how the writers in the future or in the present, we are not anymore the intellectual who is thinking about the Nobel Prize, but something like a performer who can think about the violence introjected in him, and how can we write about Brazil, about Peru, thinking about Brazil, or we can be a hard worker only with fiction. It's the power of the fiction. I think I'm thinking about it. I'm not clear,
right.
But
I think that there's a. Do you want
Oh yeah, yes. What I wanted to add that how this expression of violence could be formally expressed. How can we express these feelings formally? And for example, experimentation is and that's a mark in your work, and experimentation has been always related with the feeling of crisis along the story. And I was wondering if nowadays, at least in Latin America, we are feeling very safe in a way, and that is expressed in a very safe way to write also. And this is an open question. I am very old-fashioned guy. So my literature is only focused in language. I'm trying to explore the Spanish language as much as possible, but not formally. And so I don't know what do you think about that? Because formally for me, your literature is a challenge.
I admire what these guys are doing. I think, for example, Daniel writing in English and being his own translator or something like that, and jumping. This is a performance, I think, and the performance of being a hard worker for 6 months. I think they are forms of the experiment, of the literature experiment.
You were experimenting with being a hard worker. Yeah.
Hunger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's something that we're not talking about that's in the background of all this. It's there's a political edge to it. That a lot of times when critics talk about the new generation of Latin American writers, they lament or at the very least note the fact that there's less overt politics. But I see in throwing your analysis of Peru into the Brazilian context there is a political edge to that, even in an artistic choice. And I read a lot in books, especially in Navidad y Matanza, in your novel, a real critique of the kind of Chilean upper class.
Yeah.
The Vivar family was just skewered in this really subtle way and really wonderfully done. And of course in your especially in your crónicas, but also in your novel, this kind of rejection. I mean, it's not an overt political choice, but rejecting sort of el tedio bogotano and rejecting a lot of what you see around you, and then also the work in Medellin. Is that am I projecting on that, or is that there?
Well, I would say that that to publish is a political decision, to make public our work. And I remember a conversation I had with Santiago Roncaiolo, and he said also that, for example, our generation, which is a term I'm always, I'm not sure to use it correctly, but our generation, if we compare our generation with the Vargas Llosa's generation, for example, or the boom writers, he said that they were much more obsessed or related with power, and he refers obviously to the political power. Vargas Llosa wanted to be president of Peru. Garcia Marquez has a very close relationship with Fidel Castro, etc. And I'm not sure if that's true, because I think we are as fascinated as them, but in a most private way, in a much more private manner. For example, with the market. The market is a very, very specific power nowadays. And probably we are not so optimistic with community, but with private relationships. Probably we can see that change of sensibility about power. If we talk about our generation and the 60s or 70s writers.
Well, in some ways, in the Peruvian context, there's been so much money recently that it has changed the idea, at least for a certain middle class, there's less of a life and death situation, whereas 40 years ago, it was much more stark. I imagine in Chile, this is the same, no? There's a narcotized middle class that has a lot of money.
Chile is basically an upper class, very wealthy, and a low class with nothing, and there's no middle class. It's not like Argentina or Brazil, I think. But I think I can speak by me, but I think I need to be explicitly politic, because the politic forms of the micro politics and the biopolitics are very savage these days, and I think it's very complex to intervene in macro politics. To be president of any country is to be the CEO of any firm, but I think some generations of writers between the boom and our generation were very interested in politics. Like I thinking about especially Fogwill in Argentina, or Fernando Vallejo in Colombia, or Antonio Gil, and other writers in Chile, and of course Roberto Bolaño, and or Diamela El Cid in Chile. They are very interesting because they are very complex and sophisticated. They invented very complex and sophisticated forms of to do a political struggle from the aesthetic realm, and not being so, how can I say, grueso. So
Grueso? Thick?
Rough or
yeah, so simple to think. I want to change the world, and I want to make a better world and be a president of Peru, I think.
No, but no, I'm just talking about myself. That maybe I'm in the opposite shore because I don't feel myself like a political person, and in my work, I try to avoid thinking in themes. I explore more atmospheres and characters, and I'm also an old school boy, so I like to think in plots. But never in themes. I'm not thinking like, okay, my next novel is gonna be about drug dealing, and my next one about guerrillas in Colombia, which are the big issues. If it happens with one of my characters that is related to these words, it's okay. But I don't have like an agenda or something.
Mm-hmm. Carlos, you mentioned Bolaño, and I guess Vargas Llosa has been mentioned without being mentioned. And so I was interested when I was looking at this. We have a the three countries where the three major Latin American writers of the last 40 years are sort of present. Garcia Marquez, Vargas Llosa, and Bolaño here by nationality. And there's two different generations, the boom and the post-boom. So I was wondering if you felt that weight, if you even noticed it. I know that you studied Bolaño and sort of wrote your thesis on Bolaño. Yeah.
A master thesis.
Yeah, and then Bolaño is perhaps the most influential writer for our generation, perhaps. But certainly you've mentioned Vargas Llosa a lot in your own work, and I've never heard you mention Garcia Marquez.
No.
So maybe we can talk about that. You want to start?
He's my grandfather. So we prefer to discuss on the family, it doesn't matter. No, I don't feel that weight at all. In a way, I see Garcia Marquez as a classic, and classic is respectful but also dead person. So, so I read his work like that. Like I used to read the Bible when I was a kid, with as a great stories about killings and brothers killing each other, but it's not related to my life and directly to my writing and the things that I focus on. So I don't have that problem.
What about the other two, Bolaño, Vargas Llosa? Are they referentes? I
don't like Vargas Llosa's big cathedrals, that novels that are so well constructed and so perfect. I prefer the imperfection of his early work. It's more like a rural house, like robust but also rough. For example, La Ciudad y los Perros. I enjoyed that. And Bolaño, I mean, it's weird because he died just on with his boom. So he's a statue now, or they're trying to make a statue of him, and he died just very young.
Very young, yeah.
With such a good work, and so I wonder if he's still alive. What kind of things was he doing? But I'm not especially fond with Bolaño. I enjoy Los Detectives Salvajes, but I hate the second part, for example.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I'm teaching that next month. I'm shocked. That's my favorite part. It's this polyphonic symphony of voices. It's incredible. Well, anyway.
For me, it's noise, for example.
Beautiful noise.
I know. But
it's we're not talking to you anymore.
It's like it's like a contemporary music, like I think Stravinsky or Shostakovich or something like that.
Yeah, or John Cage or that.
Yeah. It's
I'm into Berlioz and romantic.
Yeah, you like Debussy a lot.
Okay, great.
But,
Yes.
I would say that I am a bit concerned about what I call the Saturnal writers. Saturn. Yeah, the gods who used to eat their children, right? And
the
for example, Vargas Llosa in Peru, for example, or Garcia Marquez in Colombia, or Borges in Argentina, right? We have these Saturnal writers always, and basically what I see with Vargas Llosa, which is a paradigm which has been validated with the last Nobel Prize, is that we have an imperative, for example, about realism, and we have to write realistic stories. Fantastic literature in Peru, for example, is very desconcertante, right?
Disconcerting.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel.
Yeah.
And, or for example, what happened with the magical realism, right, is an imperative that we have to we deal with that imagination of markets, for example, and we have to write this way. And I am a bit concerned how can we deal with that, and what happens is you try to challenge what is happening in the market, in the publishing market.
Specifically, I think that's a big issue here. You know, in translation in the United States, it does seem that every year there's imitation of a Garcia Marquez novel, and each year it's worse and worse. But it's published with great regularity in the United States in English, often written directly in English.
Maybe it's written by him. I mean, that imitation of imitation himself.
Yeah,
the last novel.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'll admit I didn't read the Putas Tristes.
You don't have to.
No. I forget what my question was about that, but I guess this your first publications in English. This was I suspect you'll come across. You know, people will always ask you about Bolaño, people will always ask you about Vargas Llosa, and people will always ask you about Garcia Marquez, and you'll hit the magical realist wall, perhaps. Have you yet?
For me, the wall is Bolaño. I like very much Bolaño. I think aesthetically he is a very awesome writer, but I think he's not an achiever of any new thing, as Garcia Marquez was with Cien Años de Soledad, or Borges was with Ficciones. I think Bolaño unfortunately died, and I think his major work was 2666.
2666.
Yeah.
2666. Yeah.
But I think he couldn't finish his major work, and I think Los Detectives Salvajes, Savage Detectives, is a major work. The second part.
Okay,
but I think Bolaño is part of a movement of I can repeat Fogwill. Fernando Vallejo, I don't know what you think about Vallejo. I think he's very important.
Yeah, his power with the language is I admire that.
Yeah,
but his persona I dislike. Like
that's the question. That I think all the authors
a character of himself.
Yes, all the authors from the boom. And this is the impronta, how can I say the impronta, the la huella,
the mark.
The mark of the boom that we can't shake from our shoulders, is that every writer in Latin America has to be a clown or a public person, very important, or have to be a Latin macho or a gunfighter. You have to be someone different from. You don't have to be just a writer if you are Latin American. You have to be Yushimito or from Japan, something that's exotic. This is a thing that came from Cien Años de Soledad, that Latin America from USA, it's a realm of your dreams, and in Latin America, Bolaño fights with his fellows to go and insult Octavio Paz, and Vargas Llosa fights with Garcia Marquez, not for a book, not for an aesthetic, but for a girl, and then. And I think that's the misunderstood. And Fernando Vallejo, for example, is an excellent writer, but he's a detestable character.
Yeah, barking and barking and barking.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. So the personas they invent are
yeah, but it's a shame because Fernando Vallejo is really a good writer.
Yeah, yeah.
It's unique for me. But all these, all these barks, they're eclipsing his literature.
It seems a little unfair, I'm sorry to defend Fernando Vallejos, to ask a writer to also be a nice guy. That seems that seems a bit much.
No.
Yeah, he doesn't have to.
He doesn't have to be, right?
Okay.
Yushimito
Yes,
is a total asshole, actually.
Thank you. I will consider that in my next biography.
I'll write the blurb for your next book. What a jerk!
No, but in the case of Bolaño was very careful with his persona until he died, and when he died and
he quit caring. Yeah.
They invented that Bolaño was a heroin junkie, and in order to enter the United States market, and I think that's a thing. I hope this generation, I can tell in the stories of Carlos and Andres or people like Alejandro Zambra, that's a value of silence. I think aesthetic value of silence, and the writer who can't be he hasn't to be a people who always has an opinion for everything. That's the value of
Perfect. There's a lot of more things I want to talk about, but I think we should also throw it open to the audience for a few more questions. Beth is going to go walk around with the microphone. Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, my question is for Andres Felipe Solano, and I was very interested in two things you talked about: your distance from political issues, and also your focus on characters, and how your 6 months working for minimum wage influenced that, the development of characters, maybe more than any political message you have.
Well, I don't know yet. I just wrote a novel and I'm trying to finish a second one. But for example, many people ask me if you are going to write a fiction about these 6 months, and probably not. Probably not, because if I said that I think in characters, but nowadays they're barely based on real characters. For example, my second novel is about two very weirdos, two boys, and I don't know anything even close to that. Freak guys. Yeah. So.
Not yet.
Yeah, not yet. Not yet. So I have to say this. How I'm working now is pretty much on my imagination, and I'm surprised by myself because I have all these years working on journalism, and I can say that my second novel is like a realism or something like a strong realism. I don't know if it's going to work, but at least I'm happy to do it.
I gather from this panel that for some strange reason there are no female writers in the Spanish language.
That's correct. Yes.
I can be if you want.
The list, I think actually this is one of the things that I wanted to talk about. The list that was done by Granta is very eclectic and very odd in some ways. One of them being that it groups together under the rubric Spanish language. It's not a Latin American list, it's a Spanish language list. So there's a grouping together of writers from Spain who may or may not have anything to do with what's happening in Latin America. There's no Caribbean writers, I think one Central American writer. There's only one Mexican writer, and there's only 9 women. So that's odd. I would agree with you. I think it's totally crazy. Who should have been on the list? Women writers? Would you like to help?
There's a lot of excellent women writers. I think the most of the women writers I know, they understand better than me the thing of the persona. They think most of them, they are very not fun in these tables and discussing, and I don't know if it's a political issue, but the ones who likes to be in front of a big audience, they have some how can I say that, the ones who wants to be exposed don't like to be very discursive, and the ones who has a very complex and interesting discourse, they don't receive the press attention. There's a thing related with the female figure constructed by the publicity and and you know, it's the problem of the fetish, the fetishism. Yeah, about the female writer. And in Latin America, there's it's Latin America is very chauvinist for me, and that's one of these reasons.
If I could mention just one writer, I actually have had the good luck and the honor to translate Samantha Schweblin's work. She's from Argentina. I think she's a fantastic writer. So one of my translations of one of Samantha Schweblin's stories is in this issue, and there's a couple more that I've published in different literary journals. Yeah. Nick, did you want to tell us?
Oh, no, just to add that 60% of the writers are from Spain and Argentina. There's another significant question in this issue. But more than criticize the selection, I will think about what this is expressing. What is the meaning of this? We can think about the tradition, the literary tradition in Argentina or Spain, and what means that 60% of writers included in this issue are from those countries.
And if you add the writers who live in Spain, then it's even more than that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How important is Spain right now for the Latin American writers as a space to publish, for example? That's a good question. Mm-hmm. And how difficult is for a Latin American writer to read each other in Latin America, for example? Why, for example, an Argentinian have to published in Spain in order to be read in Argentina, if they are very close. Again, the question about cultural geography and physical geography.
Yeah, or the impossibility of buying an Ecuadorian novel in Lima, in Peru. No?
Yeah, it's impossible to get a book.
Impossible, yeah. Great. Other questions? Beth, just choose. Yes.
Yes, for the panelists and the journalists, I'm also a journalism student who enjoys writing. So my question to you, is it difficult for you to divide yourself when you're a journalist and you're working specifically on those type of articles versus when you're just, I don't know, delving into a novel? You know, how do you do it to, obviously, you know, the facts have to be the facts, and here you have a little more, you know, creative license, but how do you do it?
I've been one of journalists who's working always like in a narrative pieces, so maybe I doesn't have a problem like that with that things, because I use literally tools to make my journalism pieces, so I don't feel that's a problem at all, and I feel lucky for that, because it must be really difficult to change from one register to the other. But no, I don't have that problem.
Someone once said that there were 5,000 serious readers in the United States, and I wonder how Latin America is doing. How relevant is literature in Latin? It's an overly broad question, but I'm interested in whether the internet is taking away serious readers.
There are more writers than readers now, which is very dangerous.
No, I think that the literature is very alive in Latin America, because you have to consider that the oral literature is very a strong force. The indigenous literature is oral, and in Chile, I can talk about Chile. There's a very quotidian daily practice in the countryside of telling stories by the sunset when you are doing the harvest, and Chile is mostly rural. So literature like us, like the one we write, it has to reach this realm too. I like to be in the countryside and practice the oral literature and the music, the popular music. It's part of the literature.
There was another thing that I wanted to ask earlier. In your work, similar to Bolaño's work, you have these young people who are sort of obsessed with literature to the point where it takes over their lives. Especially in Navidad, the idea of this novel written by many hands, and that it kind of jumps over its board like a river that spills its banks. It felt very familiar in a certain way, because every Chilean I've ever met is a poet of some sort. Is this just a thing in Chile, or it's just a national obsession?
Yeah. Well, I think you know Neruda or Gabriela Mistral or Huidobro. Chile, I think for ancient years, before the Spains came to these regions, the Indians, the Mapuche or the Quechua, they have they are very used to cultivate the word, the verbal narrative as a sacred realm, a sacred thing that it's like the shamanism. The person who practices the word is the most important in their group. And in Chile, the machi of the Mapuches is the person who speaks for the people, who cures when somebody is sick with words, and so in Chile everybody wants to be a poet because the poet has a very high consideration in the social from a social view. I think.
Well, my name is Ruben. I'm Mexican. I went to school in Mexico first, and then I came to the U.S. And I wanted to actually apologize to you all, but I'm a fourth, and there's very little spaces that I can actually speak in Spanish and know that the people that are asking the questions who can understand what I'm saying. So I'm going to be a little bit rude to any of the non-Spanish speakers, pero quiero hablar español un poquito.
Dale.
Veo más y más que el sistema educativo se trata en una alta frecuencia aquí en Estados Unidos, pero una vez que se habla de la educación que está viniendo de Latinoamérica, se pierde ese valor, ¿no? Estamos viendo más y más que a nivel doctorado, maestría, se vienen a Estados Unidos y los se quieren regresar, y muchos se quedan aquí, o se van a España, se van a Europa, o se van a otras partes del mundo y quieren trabajar de ese formato a Latinoamérica. A nivel de literatura están publicando ya para que se puedan regresar los libros, la educación y todo eso para Latinoamérica. Y estuve en conversación con mi mamá porque ella se graduó de UNAM en México, de psicólogo. Le estoy diciendo, me quiero ir a sacar la maestría, el doctorado a Latinoamérica. Y me llora, o sea, me dicen, estás loco, we came to the US for a reason, venimos a Estados Unidos por eso, saca tu diploma aquí y ya si te quieres ir te regresas. Entonces, sabiendo que ustedes son chilenos, de diferentes partes de Latinoamérica, y están aquí sacando su doctorado y todo eso, ¿cuál es la dinámica o opinión o algo, palabras de por qué tomaron esa decisión? Y si están estudiando aquí y siguen haciendo trabajo en Latinoamérica, ¿cuál es la dinámica cómo los afecta, no?
Okay. Rubén, voy a traducir un poquito, resumir para todos. Basically, for those who didn't catch it, the question is basically about the people coming to the United States and to Europe to study, Latin Americans coming to the United States and Europe to study, and what is gained and what is lost, to summarize very quickly. Yeah? Of the four of us, only Carlos Yushimito is you're the only academic on the table, so why don't you answer
the boring one in this event. Basically, have a very specific reasons. For example, the libraries. It's impossible to make research in Latin America because the resources are very, very poor. Another reason, a specific time to do this research. It's impossible to do it in Peru specifically. But yes, you're right. We need to return to our countries in order to I don't know, to improve our societies. And on the other hand, I am a bit concerned also with the fate or the extreme fate we have in universities in Peru. For example, we have a lot of students. I don't know how many universities we have in Peru, for maybe 20. And these people finish their studies and they drive a taxi, right? So we have an extreme fate in education, and probably there is another paradigm. We have to believe in education, and that's right. We think about the projects of Latin America in the 19th century, and it's all based in education, like Sarmiento's, for example. But we need to design a specific educational system in Latin America. And probably we who receive education here have to do it in the future. And probably I will be back. I have to finish here before. And I have a lot of friends who are who are returning after their doctorate. But that depends on your point of view. What do you want to do? If your project is more individual, or you believe are believing in community. It's very difficult because that is a personal option. What you say? Right.
If I could add just one thing, so you were San Marcos, right?
Yeah.
So San Marcos is the equivalent of La UNAM in Peru, and it's the oldest university of the Americas, the first one founded in all the Americas, and it's suffered from decades of neglect. It was one of the most prestigious educational institutions in the country and in Latin America, and it's suffering extreme neglect, not just physical, but the teachers aren't paid well. They all have to moonlight at other universities, and a lot of them, my friends who teach there out of a love for the institution that goes beyond the call of duty. They're basically giving away their labors in order to teach at this public university that receives students of all socioeconomic classes. As it concerns us here at Berkeley, we have to worry about Berkeley becoming San Marcos with the budget cuts that are coming, and the possibility that this wonderful institution will not be what it was 20 years from now or 30 years from now. And let me tell you, like, going to San Marcos, and it must hurt even more if you studied there, is tough. I mean, it's physically a demoralizing place to visit. I mean, it literally looks like parts of it bombed out. I don't know if you saw recently lo que hizo Castañeda with the wall. Yeah. It's horrible. I mean, it's absolutely horrible. So that's just to bring it back here to California. Do we have time for one more question? Yes.
This question is actually for Daniel. I want to ask you about politics, because I read some of your stories, and a lot of them involve politics in some way, but they don't seem particularly politically motivated. There isn't some theme or message about politics. And so I wanted to know how it had influenced your own writing, how politics had, and how possible it is to make a meaningful comment on your specific time and culture without including a discussion of politics.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great question. I'm going to let everyone on the table answer it as well. Just in my own work, I think politics is always in the background. Some of my stories have dealt with it specifically. My novel sort of deals with the aftermath of a very violent political conflict in a country like Peru. But I would say, like Andres, I focus first on my characters. Or at least when I'm sitting down to write, that's what I'm most concerned with, is my characters and their reality. And I read about politics. I follow politics in Latin America and the United States with increasing levels of dismay and horror in both cases. And it's frankly too depressing for me to address it head on, honestly. I don't think that I will be the one to write the novel of the Obama tragedy, for example. I don't have the heart right now to do it. Someone will do it, and I'm sure it'll be an important book, but I can't do it directly. So what I do like is to obliquely reference the situation. But I think we can throw this open to everyone, and that'd be a fitting place to end.
Yeah, I want to mix the two questions. The two questions, because I think it's we are in the States, but we are Latin American, but the States are going Latin America. That's a utopia.
Welcome.
Welcome to the United States. But it's an order to us to return to. I have to return to Chile before, after living in the States 5 years, because I'm Chilean, but Chilean have always been since the 70s when I born part of the United States. Chilean is a project. In some ways, it's a project of the Chicago economical. I don't know how it's the Chicago
School. Yeah.
The Chicago School, the Chicago Economical School, and so you have to think about the power of the United States in the world. It's so amazing. So it's like France, like now is part of Africa. France now is Africa, and because the colonialism has a karma. You go to Chile, and then Chile go to knock your door, So you have to think Mexico and United States like one entity in the future.
So like Stefan Dedalus, the character of Joyce, history is not nightmare. So.
What you're trying to awake, though.
Oh, well,
Do you want to finish off?
yes, I have to say, because you made me the slogan that I am an asshole. And
It's going to be
I have
in
to
your
say that I
book
don't
by
believe
Daniel
it.
Alarcon.
Yeah, I would use a T-shirt. And well, I have to say that I don't believe in a political use of literature. I don't believe the literature or any books will change the world, and our actions politically will come from our use of citizenship, probably outside our role of writers. So I just write to affect a private world, probably, and a reader. It's just like a message in the bottle. And
if someone catches, it's okay. If not,
yeah. But outside that, I can say whatever I want, but not in the books. And probably I will do it, but like a citizen.
Very well. Do you want to? No. Thank you, Carlos, Andres. Thank you to all of you. Thank you to the Center for Latin American Studies.
thank you.